First, thank you for joining. Well, I think reading the title, you guys know what I'm gonna talk about. So I'll start by maybe sharing a little bit about myself. Why did I pick that topic and things like that. So first of all, as you guys know, as everyone know, I'm gonna talk about like how to deliver while being like literally we're all living in an uncertain time and like very stressful times. And yeah, I chose that topic because I'm living it every day with my team. And I'm sure everybody hopefully might hopefully share at the end like their experience or something. So I'll leave 5 minutes. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time. So the whole thing is 20 minutes. I'll speak for 15 and keep 5 at the end for questions or like sharing experience. So first, a little bit about myself. So I'm Samah Gad. I'm actually originally Egyptian, but I live in US now, and I've moved to US 13 years ago. And this is home now, but I do visit my family, so I still have Egyptian family in Egypt. I first moved here to do my PhD in computer science with a focus on machine learning. I'm currently working for Amazon Music to be specific. I've been there for over 3 years. And before that, I was a technical co-founder of a startup in the Washington State area, in Seattle to be specific. Yeah, and my background is in machine learning. The team I manage in Amazon and even in my startup, there was a big machine learning component to both. Yeah, so not to delay this further, what do you as audience expect from my talk or like session? So the session is not targeted as managers. I maybe actually forgot to say that I am a software engineering manager in Amazon. I have a team of 12 people, yeah. Part of the team is focused on machine learning, and the other part is focused on like back-end engineering, software engineering systems. So as I mentioned, this talk is not focused only for managers. It's for both managers and individual contributors. And for managers, hopefully it will be helpful. It will be helpful advice for them to go and apply right away. I kept it pretty light and things that you can. I mean, it's not very complicated to take away and like maybe read a little bit about it. And then for individual contributors, it's tools that you can take and work with your manager to like, and even your colleagues within your team. And hopefully these help. So as a manager, or like even as an individual contributor, there is 2 ways of management, right? There is managing up and managing down. And even though the title is a bit, I personally don't like the way it's presented, but that's the classical way or like the well-known way in management. When they say managing down and managing up. By managing down, they mean people who reports to you. I would actually expand that further and say people who are junior to you. And then managing up, meaning people you're reporting to, like your stakeholders. It doesn't have to be your boss or like boss's boss or like skip manager. It can be stakeholders, like your customers, right? Your customers meaning if you're in a startup, it can be the actual customer or like investors. And if in a company, it's going to be like your product manager, your clients team. If you're a backend team, the teams that are calling your APIs, they are your stakeholder / you also have to manage their expectation, and we'll talk more about that. So let's start by managing down. So this is, again, applies to managers and individual contributors. So in both managing down and managing up, I'm dividing things into mainly 3 parts. Quickly, I'm going to just mention them, but you're going to see the slides. So it's communication, planning, and empathy. There is an extra part in managing down, which is team building. I'll talk about briefly, but let's start with communication. And you'll see the same theme when I start talking about managing up as well, because it's all the same in a way, or close. So communication. In a typical situation, you have to, as someone who works in a team, you have to always communicate. But in a state where we're at right now you actually have to increase this communication to avoid surprises. People are like maybe a little bit distracted. So maybe you're sharing a status of your work, or as a manager, say sharing a status of a project. If you didn't make sure that your manager or like your, we're talking about down. So if you're making sure that as an individual contributor, your engineers are communicating well and giving you enough details about their status, it's important to double down on that, because there is a chance of like misinformation and surprises, meaning that like, oh, a project is derailed, or like the deadline moved, all these typical things we deal with on a daily basis, right? So increased communication is very important when you work with your team. It's both ways, by the way. So managers, if something changed because of anything that is changing in the world, like most of the companies, for example, started launching things, and like for Amazon Music, for example, they launched like a special playlist for the situations we're in right now. And other companies, I'm sure, like Zoom, for example, I'm guessing at this point, like I'm sure they doubled down on so many things to actually enable the software to scale and like be more stable for users, given like the instant increase in the number of users they faced. And they changed features, right? Like they had the feature where you can use it free for 30 minutes. I didn't keep track of how big is the period now, that, or like the time they allow people to use it for free. But the point is, as a manager or like as a lead in your team, or as someone who has people junior to them and looking up to you as a person, you should increase communication. And if things are changing, and we'll talk a little bit about when it goes the other way in this second part of this. So another point as well that I found helpful in all times, not just this time, is written communication. Spoken communication is sometimes, not sometimes, most of the time is not the best. Not everyone is able not everyone is able to articulate what they want to share when they speak, but when you write it, you actually will find the gaps in the thing you're sharing. You're thinking about it more thoroughly. So I always share with my team that you write your status, write the problems you're facing. Just literally one sentence. You're actually going to say like, oh, does that make sense? Did I miss something? Did I miss information? It's an overhead. It's work, but it's important to make sure that communication is clear about the status of your work, and avoid any, again, surprises. Another thing in communication, video calls. Sometimes like, oh, great, we're working from home. Why do I need to open my camera? I just be as comfortable as possible. I don't need to open my camera. But given the extended time period now we're facing, that we're all working from home, it is important to work with the team to open the camera and do video calls, especially like things like stand-ups. You have team members who are new to your team, that they never interacted with you and your team before, and like them not seeing their teammates' faces actually causes a lot of, it will make them feel lost. It will extend their ramp-up time and onboarding even further, because just imagine you're talking to someone you don't see, right? Some people actually, video calls are very important because some people are visual, like they want to see who's talking, they want to see they want to see what you're talking about as well. Like, so beside video calls, also share your screen and point to what you're talking about, because that makes, it's to your benefit to make sure that people are following what you're saying, because technically in all the meetings you do, you need an output, and that output you might not get if you ended up with a distracted audience. Planning. So as managers, and also even individual contributors, and I'm talking more about individual contributors that like work with multiple engineers, like at least like project leads and things like that. They are still individual contributors. They are not managing people, but they are managing another set of engineers, where like on a project level, like from the execution implementation perspective. You first have to think about what type of project you're working on. Like, is it a straightforward software engineering project where like, oh, great, we know how long it needs to be done. We know what to build. Like, we don't need to spend like a month or even more figuring out how to even solve the problem. Or is it a very ambiguous problem? Like, mostly, not all the machine learning problems are ambiguous, but most of the time they are, because they have an experimentation side of it, a big one actually. And also, as someone like managing a project that is ambiguous, or like do have an experimental side of it, you have to manage expectation, manage timelines, plan accordingly, have enough time, understand the process if you're new to it, of developing those type of systems, and make sure that you're planning things accordingly. And again, because the situation we're all in right now, make sure that you have enough time, that it's to recover from surprises, to recover from things that weren't planned, to have enough discussions, right? Like, either you follow Agile or not. I feel like most companies follow a version or another from like Scrum events. And Scrum events, as hopefully most of you know, if not, that's okay. There is like sprint planning, there is demos, there is retrospective, and there is stand-up. And I apologize if someone on the session who's not in like a tech team, but this is typically like the basic events of software development, like process or Agile. I mean, it's not, it's Scrum. And so these typically take X. In a situation like we're in right now, imagine you don't have a whiteboard, you don't have like this channel of like seeing the person in front of you talking about something. Like, if you notice in meetings, sometimes people use their hands to explain something, and like start visualizing things in the air, like how things interact with each other, how services to call each other. They start working like drawing on a whiteboard. This is all not here. It doesn't exist. I mean, there are tools out there that you can use, but it's not going to be as quick as before. It's always bake in time that in like your typical events and like planning your project, or even giving the status about the project, or even doing a retrospect about something that went wrong. This is all require a little bit of more time. So make sure to add that in your, like, take care of that and plan for this extra time. Okay, time for surprises. We mentioned that already. And also, this one thing is very important, is to expect lower velocity or slower velocity. Don't expect your team, and this will take me to the next slide pretty quickly. Don't expect the team to be hearing all this news in the world and like having all this uncertainty, like taking care of their family, taking care of themselves, taking care of their emotional state, and yet delivered with the same velocity they did before all this. So this is very important for managers, especially if you're managing people. This is part of our job, is to make sure that we protect our team, we understand their emotional state, their state in general, and plan accordingly. So that takes me to empathy. As managers, especially when you manage people, I mean, managers manage people, projects, and like mentor. So because there is the people management portion of things, you have to, us as managers have to learn to empathize and to understand and learn how people are dealing with different things. Not even in the state we're in, like even in a normal situation, always ask your team members, how are they doing? How are they feeling? Even if there's nothing happening major, I mean, there's always something major happening in the world in a way or another, but there's something common that we all impacts everyone. So double down on asking how they're doing. Don't assume that they are, if you're okay and you're enjoying working from home, don't assume they are. Here, like, ask them and listen. As I said, listen, as I wrote, listen, and listen. And always, not everyone will be open to talk about how what problems they're facing. And like, it is not, as they call it, it's not a level ground, right? Like, everyone is different. Everyone is dealing, like, working from home for someone is heaven. Someone else is like, I know they can't deal with it anymore. And things like that. Like, people with different situations deals with different, or like issues like we're dealing with here differently. So the last thing from managing down is don't cancel. Like if you typically had, and even if you didn't, maybe that's a good opportunity to start doing that. Team building activities, do not not do them. Meaning, maybe you'll say like, oh, we're not together. Why would we do a happy hour? Or no, we are not in the same place. Why do we do a celebration event? Like, what does that even mean? It means a lot. Do a happy hour, do a virtual happy hour. You'll be surprised. People will show up, people it will change their mood. They will be happy, they'll feel connected to their team. I tried it with my team and it worked well. And do happy hours, as I said, do celebrations as possible. Like even with my team, we did an escape room, a virtual escape room, which was very fun. So don't skip on these. It's important. You would, even if your team did not show that they care about them, it actually changes the way they feel about the team and about their work, majorly actually. You'll be surprised. So beside like making sure that they're like from the work perspective, the planning as well, so they're not overloaded. Keeping them connected on like the relationship level with the team and team building, it's very, very important. And don't put that aside until we're out of this work from home situation. Actually try to do it often so they can feel more connected. There are so many great ways to do that. And yeah, and it's fun. So, and it helped the team stay connected, as I mentioned. So managing up, so we're over. I was hoping to leave 5 minutes, but I'll try to speed up. So managing up, you'll see the repetition in a way, like you're doing the same things, but in a different way. So now you're a manager or like even an engineer and you want to manage expectation with your stakeholders or like your manager. So communication, same goes. Make sure that you agree with your stakeholders and your, I'm gonna say stakeholders that includes your manager, about your goals, right? What are the goals that you're trying to deliver on? By goals meaning like, it can be anything in any industry, right? Goals can be a new feature, it depends which field you're in, right? So define your goals, make sure they are well understood, revisit them if needed, because it's important. Like if this situation is slowing down your team, make sure to be vocal and say, it's better to go to your stakeholder and say, given where we're in and seeing the lower velocity of my team, I would like to revisit this goal for this year. It's better than waiting until you don't deliver the goal and say like, oh, it's because of COVID or like because of what happened or because of work from home. It's a better, but much better state and much better communication. Even if it didn't happen, if they say like, oh no, we can't change the goals, at least they know that you called that risk. As I mentioned, yeah, it's again, make sure visibility into the progress, visibility into velocity of your team. If there's like, keep an eye on those things. And if you didn't consciously think about them, it's going to be really hard to track. Whatever tool you use, make sure there is a way to track that, to make sure that you're predicting that you're going to deliver on your projects on time and your goals for the year or the quarter. Yeah, same thing for that. Like write down statuses. Great, share them verbally, but also it's good to send a follow-up email saying this is the status, especially when something is not going well. There's always something that's not going well in software engineering, if that makes sense. The trick from the management perspective or leaders of projects is that they just create visibility into what went wrong, how are we preventing that from happening again, or like what went well, because lots of things can go well and your stakeholders doesn't know of them, so they're not going to count, if that makes sense. So write down the wins, write down the misses, and write down the plan to recover from the misses. So written communication is key on like either managing up or managing down, as I mentioned. Again, video call. When talking to your stakeholders, them being your customers or your product manager or your other teams you're working with or your manager, always do a video call. It's much better. It makes them, it keeps the connection. It shows a lot of, you'll be surprised how much information goes into like your body language and your facial expressions and beside also written. So it complements each other, and voice is always, I mean, maybe I'm doubling down because I'm a visual person. So it's very hard for me now that I don't see you. But I mean, this is where we're in right now. It's a virtual conference, so it's hopefully we'll meet you sometime somewhere. But so make sure that just you do video calls all the time with your stakeholders, at least. With your team, you can do it every once in a while and make sure at least once a day you at least maybe stand up or something that you open that. So communication planning. So as I mentioned as well, like I think I did touch on planning a little bit when I talked in the communication session slide. So revisit your goals. As I said, it's always better to just call it out as a risk and better than waiting until the last minute or like the time of delivery and say like, oh, that's why it didn't go well. Also, I did mention that a little bit where like talk to your stakeholders or like your manager or skip manager about the type of projects you're taking. It is easy for stakeholders to say like, great, this is a project we have this year, take it in. But it's your job as like either an individual contributor or a manager to explain the complexity of the project. If it's not a straightforward project, make sure there is enough time baked in to do experimentation. Manage expectation that experimentation might not always be successful. These are critical information to share with your stakeholders. Empathy. Even when you're managing up, you have to have empathy. We're all humans. Managers are not superheroes, meaning that you have to take care of your team and ask about their state, how are they doing, but also keep in mind and don't assume how they feel about certain things. Same thing goes to your stakeholders or like upward. Don't assume don't assume their state. Don't assume how they're feeling about what's going on. And also don't assume that they know everything that's going with you and your team. And share and share and share. That's why I double down on that, because without you sharing what's going on with you personally, what's going on with your team, which must be again different and a lot for different people, share to what's going on with you and what's going on with your team as well, so they would know how to set their expectations as well. So we're done. So I made this in a separate slide. If you notice the theme of what all my slides and what I talked about, if you want to take one thing from this session, it's how important communication is. Not just as a manager, as honestly in anything in life. The better communicator you are, the more you can portray your success well, the more you can create understanding to misses. So it's as I mentioned, if you're going to take one thing, it's communication. It's key to, as I said, communicating your success or like even communicating misses and how are you going to recover from them. So if there is one skill on top of your technical hard skills, communication is a good soft skill to have and to master. These are two books that actually shaped I've been managing people for 6 years now. And these are two books that are really good. I can't remember the publishing like when they were published, but I know that the last one is pretty old. The culture map one, even though the title might not be appealing, especially for people in technical fields, but it was very eye-opening to me, because especially if you're in a tech company or like in any diverse enough environment, this book is very eye-opening, because diversity doesn't mean like race only, it also means personalities. And so that book was eye-opening to me, because it helped me actually communicate with people in my team, adapt to their personalities, even understand my own personality, and why I think this way, or why do I interact with people the way I do, or like communicate with them the way I do. There are so many references, but I thought these are the most valuable ones, at least to me. So I thought I should share them with you. Yeah, so we're over time by 5 minutes, but no one kicked us out. So I can hopefully answer a few questions. I honestly don't know. I'll read a few questions and answer them. I don't want to hold people back from going to other sessions. Someone is asking about empathy. What if they tell you all the time, I'm good? So that's actually a pretty good question, because that happens all the time. When you talk to your team and your one-on-ones, always ask them how they feel in your one-on-ones, like it's just you and the engineer or the person you're managing. They're gonna always start with like, yeah, everything is good. And then it's your job as a manager to sense the tone. And it's okay to double down and say like, yeah, but I hear, are you sure? You can ask the question a different way too. Like you can ask, is there anything you would like to change? Maybe they don't want to talk about their own life or like what they're going through, but maybe you actually get something from them when you ask about like, how do you feel about your project? Or how do you feel about like, do you get enough help from your team? You can start getting more other questions to actually get how they actually, if they're dealing with problems or like anything that might impact them or like, and eventually, of course, impact the project. So yeah, they're gonna always start with, I'm good, everything is great or fine. But you can all sense the tone and then start asking them questions about like the projects, if they're getting help from their teammates, especially if they are junior engineers. One thing that I noticed that junior engineers who like just come out of college, they tend to like be diehards, or like they still don't know how to say no. They still don't know how to manage their time, and they just want to prove themselves, and they end up sometimes like burning themselves out. And it's like sometimes some of them are like, and I mean most of them are like super smart, and like you don't want to lose them because they are still learning how to manage their time and still learning how to say no. They don't know that they can say no, like oh no, I have enough, or I have enough work, or like someone, like they're working on their task and someone is reaching out to them about something and then suddenly they ran out of time. These are skills that are still very green and they're learning. And so as a manager, you have to make sure that you keep an eye on like their sprint and their work. And I'm talking again from the technical perspective, but I'm sure this kind of applies to other fields as well, if someone not in an engineering team. Sorry, I'm going in random order. So this was a question about slides. Do you directly communicate with clients? In my current job, no. By clients, if you're talking about clients, meaning the user of the app, no, I don't. In my startup, I did. So in my startup, it was like a B2B, meaning business. We were a business selling to businesses. So I would actually, I like that part of it. So I actually went on demos to like prospect clients that we want them to use our app. And so, yeah, at that period of time I did. And at the very beginning of the company as well, even though I am technical, I was involved in like customer development, and like I interviewed people to understand what features they want. And that was a very fun part of my job when I was in a startup. Would you be okay to share the slides? Yeah, of course. I think the session is recorded, and I'll check with the conference organizers how can we share the slides. But yeah, I can for sure share them. What if your manager tells you to work less and take more time to work on projects than you usually do? I don't understand the question. If the person is still here, would you please elaborate a little bit? I'm reading a question. So I totally agree with the communication, as you said, but if your manager is a man, I think, and you are a woman, and he doesn't want to communicate or tell you to not answer clients or users to their emails or phone calls. That's a tricky situation. There's always, it depends where you are, but I think any successful company is customer obsessed, meaning that a customer can be a different team or like another client. in this case, maybe you don't have visibility into if the manager maybe have someone else answer those calls or like answer those emails. So don't assume that they are telling you not to do something and it's not going to happen. I don't, of course, know the details, but if your manager told you this, don't do that part and focus on your task, maybe again, I'm guessing they have a plan or someone else to answer those questions and emails. But given that I don't know the details, it's kind of hard to give advice here. I apologize. Yeah, I think that was the last question. Yeah, someone is saying recordings are available. Oh, okay, only for VIP. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so again, I'm seeing, I think one of the attendees is talking about like, oh, the manager is still asking for progress, even though, so I'm assuming that they're asking for progress for things they told you not to do. I'm assuming. In this case, that's a bigger communication problem. That requires, I think it's always safe to go to your skip manager to talk about these things. Like if you notice these type of things where like you're being asked to not to do something yet, then later that person, your manager is asking you for progress on it, that's a bit of a red flag. And maybe start by creating visibility into like what you're working on. And if there's no way in your team to create that visibility, maybe be the person to initiate that by having like a springboard or like use tools that track tasks, so that the manager, maybe they're not using any tools to track what work did they assign to people. So that's actually a big gap that's maybe creating that issue. Again, I'm guessing. So maybe you can take the initiative and to make your life and your team life easier and create that visibility to your manager. And maybe start by you like putting together like even like a shared Google Sheet or like Google Doc, where like, I don't know what tools you're using, but let's say you're not using any of like Asana or like Jira or like any of those typical task tracking. Create a way to create that visibility on what you're working on this week, and mark things as done. And so that way the manager can see what you're working on and like not forget that they told you not to work on that task or that other task. I think that's maybe a way to resolve that issue. Yeah, no problem. I hope that was helpful, and I hope in a different situation we would have met in person. But yeah, great. Thanks, everyone. And feel free to connect with me. You can click on, I think, I don't know, how do you see things, but I think you can see a picture of me somewhere, click on it, and feel free to connect. Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.